Hi, Simone. Really, really happy to have you on my channel for this really insightful conversation. You're an INFJ and a coach and mentor in Switzerland. And I'm very excited to discuss about burnout and stress with you today from a more general mental health perspective. So if you want to tell my audience a few things about you.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Theo. Thanks for having me. I'm so honored, to be honest. I'm such a big fan of your channel, so it's a very special occasion for me. Yeah, so I'm Simone from Zurich. I just recently started my YouTube channel on mental health topics. It's still very small family there. And I raise mental health awareness there and talk about my own experience with burnout, depression, and anxiety disorder. And I also started my mentoring/coaching business, where I help people with experience with psychological problems, mental health illnesses, stand up for themselves a bit more through communication skills or developing their communication skills.
Yeah. You touched me perfectly with that, because I also work with people on coaching and communication skills development, and I'm 100% with you with respect to this message. So I guess, a natural question that would come is, how do you think your personality, not just from an MBTI perspective, but in general, in terms of your strengths and weaknesses, how do you think this is reflected in your coaching work? How does it help you, and what kind of problems does it cause for you?
Mm-hmm. So what really helps, I mean, it's quite obvious, is that I love people, that I love to get in touch with different kinds of characters, and I'm really invested in the stories of other people, and I love to try to see through them and see their motives, and just also understand where they're coming from. And of course, this is a big plus for coaching, this general interest in people. And I also think, and that's what I hear a lot as a feedback, that I make people feel welcome. And whatever they have or whatever they are talking about, I seem to give them comfort, a feeling of comfort, and they feel great at opening up to me, which also, helps, of course, and which is a big honor to me to hear. Also, I think it's easy to me to pick up on motives of people, to already feel or see stuff they might not feel in that moment. And I can get quite involved into the conversation like that. I can really dive into them. I guess you can relate to
Definitely.
And I think I have a quite good pattern recognition that also goes with Anna, I guess. So I can see patterns in behavior of people that, they might not have seen or not yet have seen. And this can be a blessing and a curse. So that being said, what hinders me or has hindered me in the past when coaching people is this, I don't know if you know that, but I tend to jump to conclusions.
Right.
So people start a sentence, start to talk about their story, and I'm like, oh yeah, my brain is like, oh yeah, I know where this is going, and I know where you're heading at, and I already kind of know a solution. And this is where I had to restrain myself and really listen and really pay attention what's really happening. So that, of course, can be a bit hindering and is and was a field of development for me personally in coaching.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm not just saying this from a, MBTI or Enneagram perspective. I'm also saying it from the perspective of working in coaching or working in therapy or working in training, because it's so important to be able to listen, like you said, and just try to be there with your client every step of the way without pushing too hard when the person is not ready. And also, not coming up with the answer yourself, because it might be true, but the person still needs to see it for themselves. And secondly, it might not be true, like you said.
Yeah, and that's frustrating if you jump ahead and then you see like, oh, this was not at all where this was going, and this really shouldn't happen. And I hear that a lot also from colleagues. So that seems to be a common issue.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what hinders me a bit as well sometimes, but people don't feel that, of course, in the coaching sessions, is that I'm a huge perfectionist. So I tend to over prepare a little bit for coaching sessions when you should be just open-minded and just see how it unfolds. And that was also something I needed to consciously learn in my process.
Yeah, that makes me feel something very strongly, because when I listen to you say that, I remember that when I was starting out, I thought that I would feel more comfortable with preparing and planning a lot, which is good and is important. But like you said, sometimes the magic happens with the person when they're really being vulnerable and you're listening and connecting to what they have to say, which might sometimes not be exactly aligned with what you were prepared to talk about. And I think this is very, very important to kind of switch between the two.
That's so true. And this is why I sometimes don't like to say that I empathize very well with people. It's more like sympathizing as well, like listening and really try to understand where they are coming from, and not jump to conclusion, and also not to concentrate too much on, am I emphasizing enough right now? So
yeah, exactly. Because if you do that, the whole focus just goes inward and you can't connect and focus on the other person.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm also curious to kind of talk to you about is your own perspective or your own experience with burnout, stress, and depression, because you did mention it a little bit at the beginning. How do you think that this has kind of helped you grow in your work as well? And do you think there's anything related to your type, maybe MBTI or Enneagram, that made it more difficult for you to kind of handle, I guess?
Oh my God, so much things go into that story. So yeah, unfortunately, I had a burnout twice, but I think they are connected. So they happened within like a year or so. So I guess I just haven't recovered from the first one. Just moved on too quickly. So first thing I can say, it makes my work within the topic of mental health easier, of course, because I lived through some stuff myself. I know the difficulties. I mean, we're all different, of course, but I know some of the main difficulties I know the stigma that lies on it. I had to fight against it as well, still do to this day. And so I guess it's much more easier than, again, to emphasize and sympathize with others going through similar stories. So that's one point. And regarding type, so I think as an INFJ, and you just sent out an email regarding this topic today, as an INFJ, I'm kind of prone to be maybe not a people pleaser per se, but just feeling the emotions of others too much and wanting to, it is people pleaser, wanting to please the emotions of others, wanting to please the expectations of others too much. And that's of course very bad when it comes to stand up for yourself and listening to your own emotions, because that doesn't happen when you always try to run, when you're always running behind people and trying to satisfy their needs. And in a work environment, that can be very, very difficult, especially when the work environment is not ideal. So that was just my story. It's not always the same, but in my case, I was in a work environment that doesn't really fit a person that needs a vision that also includes people and not only making a huge ton of money. And there was a lot of just planning for the sake of planning, just reaching goals for the sake of reaching goals, but not seeing the big picture. And no offense, I mean, I had a good time at these companies as well, but it just didn't fit me. And so being a people pleaser and being being very, how do you call it in English, valuing harmony.
Yeah,
it was very difficult to me to talk about this stuff that didn't fit me, or that hurt me, or that wasn't good for my mental health. And yeah, I think this is a trait of the INFJs and of the extroverted feelers in general. And what was also difficult is that, I don't know if that's an INFJ trait or just my personality, but when it comes to expressing my emotions, or if I don't feel well, sometimes I think in images more than in words. And it was so difficult to make myself understood sometimes. And that was also the big revelation for me when I thought about it later.
Right.
I need to learn to communicate my needs in a way that others understand me. Other people have another way of communicating and have another image of the world. So I need to learn to manage that a bit better. Yeah, so just as a tangent here. And I mean, as an Enneagram 1 wing 9, I told you 2, but there's a lot of 2 in it as well, but it's more 9. I also had a tendency to not being able to let go of certain situations. Like I wasn't able to just say, okay, I quit because it's not good for me anymore, because I had this, I wanted to change the situation for me and for others. So I fight it, and at some point I didn't realize anymore what I was fighting for. And yeah, this being very ambitious and maybe not in a healthy way also didn't help me to just quit, which is a good thing.
I'm with you on that. And I think you made a good point right now about Enneagram 1, because Enneagram 1 and 2 and 6 are all compliant types. So not only do you have a preference for extroverted feeling high up in your stack, but you also have a core Enneagram type that is very much focused on meeting the expectations of other people. And the two together can be very challenging. I'm in the same group because I'm an Enneagram 2. So that makes a lot of sense. And I think this is the most challenging part for FJs who are either 1, 2, or 6, to kind of learn to say, okay, this is my limit. This is how much I can do. Afterwards, it might not be good for me. But the problem is we often just so automatically focus on what other people need that we completely forget about what our boundaries actually look like. And we don't realize.
So true. Yeah, that's so true. I feel so understood here.
Oh, by the way, you also mentioned the images and the fact that you think in images. And I can honestly highlight that that's something very important to me, because in my own developmental journey, and not just along the journey, but right now as well, it's so much easier to process my emotions as images. Like for some reason, they become like concepts. And I have a coach that I sometimes go to. He's also an INFJ. And he helps me with visualizing my own feelings as symbols.
Nice.
And honestly, that helps more than talking about it, because the talking about part I can do myself, or I can talk about someone close to me, and it's good because it makes me feel understood. But I think NI still needs to put everything into like a holistic, symbolic nature to really feel understood. And I really connected with what you said there.
Oh, that's very interesting, because I saw it more as a burden. But maybe that's because I think I always suppressed this side in me a bit, because it didn't really fit into, especially in the workplace. It's completely different in my private life, to be honest. But maybe I suppressed that a bit too much, and I could look at these images a bit from another perspective. Because you're right, I think it really helps that the talking about it part can be solved by just speak to another person and trying to verbalize it a bit more. That's so true. I think it felt like a burden to me, because I was sometimes thrown into like a discussion or a conflict, and I wasn't processing this image beforehand. So I only had it, and then I needed to react, and I couldn't. I couldn't explain myself. So I don't know if you know what I mean.
100%. That's exactly what I meant earlier, because I feel like when we don't have enough time, especially introverts in general, when we don't have enough time to process, we react quite negatively if people push us to, like, I don't know, do something actively about it, whether it's talking or solving the issue. Of course, extroverts need to process as well, but for introverts, it's even more of a sensitive topic, because we need that reflection to be able to then react or act.
Yeah, we need that time. I'm always wondering about how to solve this for all the introverts. Yeah, but it's so beautiful what you said, because I can now look at it a little bit more as a strength that I can develop, and maybe develop even more images of my feelings. So that was a really great point.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe you and me and other coaches can also use this as a tool in coaching sessions as well, because there are certain people who will relate to it. Of course, not everyone, other people have a different preference, but I think it can be a very useful tool for those who resonate with it.
So true. So true.
Right. Okay. Thanks for sharing that lovely experience. Now, if you are to look a little bit back and think in terms of what kind of advice would I give to someone with my personality as a teenager or as a young person, as a child even?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question. It's also a very good exercise to reconcile a bit with your past, I think. And it's a good video idea as well.
Correct.
So I don't want to generalize too much. I mean, we're also different. So I think one main point, I mean, we talked about it a lot already, is really learn at an early stage, to stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
Really feel your needs, get to know your needs, and also respect your needs, even when other people have other needs and they seem so big compared to your own. So really learn to put yourself sometimes over the needs of others. I know that feels weird, and I know that can feel very bad and egoistic, but at the end of the day, no one will thank you if you just burn yourself out in that process. So, I mean, I struggle a bit to give a concrete solution, because that might look different for everyone. But standing up for yourself and not feeling bad about it, I think this is something to master for the INFJ. Yeah. And the earlier you practice it, the better it will get later in life.
Yeah. This idea that you mentioned, I heard it mentioned by a few high FE types who told me, once I actually told this person how I really feel or what I really need, I was so scared at the beginning, but then I realized that I actually solved the problem and they were not upset and they understood me.
Right. Yes.
So it's like, it's so simple sometimes.
Sometimes you have it right before your face, but you just don't see it, and you just you're not made that way. It doesn't seem natural to you, right? So yeah. And something, I know it's very specific, it seemed to be very specific, but I just thought about this a couple of days ago. I was really bad at recognizing the signs in my body. So until the end of my 20s, well, I'm approaching 40, by the way, so until the end of my 20s, I was only my head sometimes, and I did not see the warning signs. Also, when I ran into the burnout, that was a big issue, because I could not see the signs in my body, but in retrospective, they were there and they were clear. Like everything was tense. I felt sick and I couldn't sleep. So I think we're bad at recognizing the signs in our bodies. So maybe also through mindfulness or whatever, try to listen to your body a little bit more, be a bit more of an introverted sensor, maybe.
Yeah, you're right. You kind of already answered what I was about to ask you, which is perfect.
Sorry.
No, that's great, because it was a natural connection to what I said earlier about, what in particular makes it difficult for you to sometimes handle stress. And I think this is a very good point, because listening to our bodies can be very, very insightful. Our bodies never lie. There's some book called, I actually don't remember the title, but it talks about how every single emotion that we have is encoded in our body. And we can always kind of find a connection between our sicknesses and what's going on with our emotional life. And of course, sometimes it might be a bit difficult if it's like a very serious medical problem. But as an idea, I think it's very useful. Because like you said, stress will always be reflected in your body as a stomach ache, as a headache, difficulty sleeping, this very fast heart rate or breathing rate, the adrenaline going through your body, and all of these things can be very, very insightful. But the problem with introverted intuitive types is that they are very disconnected from this part, and they have to put a lot of effort into actually paying attention to the body. What I noticed is that we often become a bit robotic about the way we kind of monitor our body, because we say, okay, we have to do this, right?
I can relate so much, and it can go to an extent where it isn't healthy anymore either. So I don't know if you can relate, but sometimes you concentrate so much on your symptoms you may have, but you can't really pinpoint what it means. That for me, of course, this can be the generalized anxiety disorder, but for me, that can cause a lot of anxiety as well. So I'm very focused on this one thing, but I can't really manage it. So yeah, and this is a bit robotic, to be honest. It's, and also like tracking stuff somewhere and trying to make some statistics that you will not look at anymore later. But
yeah, because it's basically an extreme. You either focus on it too much, or you don't focus on it enough or at all. And then, of course, neither of these two options is useful in any way, because they either stress you or they cause you more problems because you're ignoring
exactly.
it. So.
But you can learn it. I mean, I've been training that now for like 10 years or so, and it gets better, and you can see the reasons behind it more. You can really learn it. I mean, it will never be as good as someone that does it naturally, of course, but you can learn it. It's a lot of work, and for me, meditating and mindfulness training was very key to that.
Yeah, I think what helped me as well was doing this exercise. I don't remember the name, but it was an exercise that allowed me to focus on relaxing my arms, hands, and then legs as well. And I used this when I had trouble with sleeping a few years ago, and it was very, very helpful because I was very stressed at that point in time. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I know that it's, how is it called? Progressive muscle
something like that.
Something. Yes. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
Know your techniques.
Exactly. Know your techniques and just choose the one that fits you and the moment better, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. Simone, is there anything else you feel like adding or highlighting? Maybe any other idea or conclusion about mental health and stress and burnout and the relationship they have with personality that you'd like to, kind of seed into the mind of the audience?
Yeah. So what's very important to me to say is that, of course, extroverted feeler may be more prone to certain kinds of burnouts, but I think everyone can have one, and I think it's important to just look for the triggers in your own personality and just find out what's your way of taking care of yourself is, because even as an extroverted sensor going crazy somewhere, I mean, that's the stereotype, you still can get a burnout, and you still need to look inwards a bit. So I can just say, just take care of yourself, find a way that fits you to take care of yourself.
Wow, nice. Very touching.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Simone, for being with
Thank
me and
you.
sharing everything with me and my audience as well. Simone has a YouTube channel, guys. She talks about mental health. It's in German. So for those of you who speak German, either as a first language or as a second language, you can check out the channel. I will link it in the comment section below. And I'm also going to link Simone's LinkedIn profile. So if you want to get in touch and talk about coaching or anything related to mental health, communication skills, and so on, feel free to reach out to her. Thanks a lot, Simone.
Thank you, Theo. Thank you again for having me. It was a big honor and it was a great conversation. Just one remark. Yeah. I tried to do English subtitles. They may not be the best, but you can still watch my videos if you want.
Perfect. Well, even more reasons to go check out the channel and support Simone.
A little shameless plug here, but thanks again for having me. Big honor, and I hope to talk to you soon again.
Yes, thank you very much.